The Syrian refugee crisis is one of the biggest, most demanding crises that we've seen since the World War II, which here in Europe we understand exactly what that means. But at the moment there's about 50 million people that are displaced, of which approximately 10 million come from Syria. Now in Europe, they've come into Europe expecting and hoping that after going through the traumatic events that they've had in Europe, in Syria, the war, the conflict, and as one of my fellow panelists spoke about, rape as a weapon of war, but that we're seeing more and more today throughout the world, whether it be in Africa or now in Syria. They come into Europe and they came into Bulgaria expecting that they would get help and assistance, and instead they ended up in a situation where they were put in derelict buildings in very, very poor conditions and with virtually no assistance. So one of the projects that we did two. We worked on a humanitarian level, just supplying immediate humanitarian goods and aid. And the second was to help them renovate the buildings that they were in, to give them more dignity and a sense of making sense of where they are and some stability in where they were living. But the most importantly is that we wanted to look at the trauma that they'd experienced and how we could overcome and help them to overcome, and help the Bulgarian government and the Bulgarian Red Cross to assist the Syrian refugees that had come. Now the interesting thing is that 1/3 of the refugees are children under the age of 12. And I'll give you a quick example. One of the children kept drawing pictures of her house that had been destroyed in Syria. And how do you, as someone who wants to help this child overcome this trauma? And what we did was we worked with the social workers on what we call expressive therapies, where we do arts therapy, whether it be music or dance, movement, or whether it be drawing. And we took the child and we said, okay, come and draw, and we drew the house together. So the social worker would draw one part of the house, and then the child would draw the other. And through this you establish a connection, and the child is able to express what has happened, and they feel that through this connection someone can identify with them. When you're working with adults that have been through a really bad trauma like rape, or they've seen a lot of conflicts, or they've seen family members killed in front of them, it's a traumatic experience that can cause flashbacks, that can inhibit their ability to be able to cope with their lives at the moment and to look forward to their future with a sense of hope. And how do you deal with that? One of the ways that we've dealt with that is, again, through expressive therapies, where we ask the person, for example, to draw their trauma that they remember. And in the first drawing that we had, it was hard, black pen, scratched across the surface of the paper. And as they worked through it and talked about it and drew it, the second drawing had more of a circular flow to it. And when we do it, we ask them to close their eyes and to draw with both hands, so that they're able to fully express and the subconscious is expressed. And in the third picture that we looked at, you would see that the picture had a sense of a kite or something flying, like something is leaving the body. And in the final picture, there was a sense of symmetry where you had two almost angelic beings being drawn on each side, and that's what we want to see. We want to see the left and the right side of the brain talking to each other. So instead of a broken mirror, you've got symmetry, and it's an expression of that trauma that they've been through, and it helps them to pass through and to stop it being blocked, so that they start reducing the flashbacks and are able to cope with what they're experiencing in the past and also what they are experiencing in the present. Because if you come to a country like Bulgaria and you expect that you're going to be safe, and instead you're living in dire conditions, this is a trauma. Not to mention the escape. Many of them go from Syria to Jordan, or Syria to Lebanon, or through Turkey and try and get into Europe, or even worse, on boats across into Italy. And this as well, the terrible, terrible conditions. Just this last weekend, over 200 died on one of these boats, trying to escape for a better life into Europe. So this is some of the things that we're trying to do.